Alright, higher calling posse. Strap your swamp boots tight. You swamp faith swamp buzzsaw renegades. Cuz we're storming into day 28 of our 30 days of faith swamp thrashing riot like a pack of swamp outlaws slinging chaos into a swamp chill knockout that'd make a swamp gator chugging moonshine on a meth-fueled rampage jealous as heck. We're swamp breakdancing with Jesus till the swamp mud shakes and the moonshine barrels bust wide open. And you're still riding this swamp rocket with me, holy swamp guacamole. You're tougher than a swamp alligator wrestling a chainsaw in a moonshine-soaked hurricane. I'm blasting swamp holy air bazookas of hype straight through your screen. Posse. Cuz we've been swamp roaring through this faith-forged brawl like a jet fuel roller coaster tearing through the swamplands with a triple shot of swamp faith swagger. Let's rewind the swamp tape and strut those victories. Cuz 27 days in, you're a swamp faith legend who don't blink at the chaos. Day 1. Starting your day with God. Swamp prayer napalmed my Tuesday chaos into a muck-eating swamp boom that sent the storm crying. Day 2. Why faith matters every morning. Swamp faith choke slammed my Wednesday grump into grit. Day 3. Finding peace before the chaos. Swamp peace ninja start my Monday meltdown into a hush riot. Day 4. A verse to carry you through. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9 torched my Tuesday trash into a faith blaze. Day 5. Worship in the quiet moments. Psalm chapter 46 verse 10 unleashed a swamp holy ruckus. Day 6. Gratitude at dawn. Swamp thanks lit my Thursday fog. Day 7. Resting in God's promises. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 blazed my Wednesday flop. Day 8. Faith when life gets busy. Swamp grit powered my Tuesday hustle. Day 9. Praying through the storm. Philippians chapter 4 verse 6 slammed my Monday mess. Day 10. Strength in weakness. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 swamp jacked my Thursday week. Day 11. Loving others midday. Swamp faith hugged my Friday grump. Day 12. Trusting God with small things. Swamp trust torched my Wednesday nitpick. Day 13. Overcoming midday doubts. Swamp truth blasted my Tuesday wobble. Day 14. A pause for peace. Swamp chill ninja'd my Monday rush. Day 15. Facing fear with faith. Psalm chapter 23 verse 4 swamp guarded my Thursday dread. Day 16. When plans fail. Swamp faith flipped my Friday bust. Day 17. Patience in the waiting. Swamp steady held my Wednesday lag. Day 18. Faith through pain. Swamp grace carried my Tuesday ache. Day 19. Forgiveness in the afternoon. Matthew chapter 6 verse 14 swamp freed my Monday grudge. Day 20. Hope when you're tired. Swamp hope jacked my Thursday slump. Day 21. Standing firm in chaos. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 13 swamp armored my Friday storm. Day 22. Reflecting on God's goodness. Swamp thanks lit my Tuesday dusk. Day 23. Ending with gratitude. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 18 swamp thanked my Wednesday muck. Day 24. Standing in God's truth. John chapter 8 verse 32 swamp slayed my Thursday lies. Day 25. Letting go of the day. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7 torched my Friday chaos. Day 26. Prayer under the stars. Psalm chapter 8 verses 3 to 4 blasted my night muck. Day 27. Resting in his presence. Psalm chapter 46 verse 10 hushed my swamp roar. And now, day 28's dropping a swamp gut puncher. Faith that carries you to tomorrow. Swamp life's a raging swamp storm. But what if faith could sling you into tomorrow with hope? That's our rumble. Posse. Swamp picture this. Night's fading. Your swamp drowning, work's a buzzsaw. Kids are gremlins. Bills piling. Worries clawing like a swamp tornado on a moonshine binge. Swamp ever feel tomorrow's a swamp mess? That's me, Swamp Friday. Chaos hit, but faith carried me. Hope slammed in. We're swamp storming 90 minutes. Tale of a night flipped. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 roaring. Hacks to strut into tomorrow. Grab your brew, coffee, tea, or swamp moonshine, and let's swamp torch this trail. Alright, higher calling posse. Let's swamp dive deep into the why. Why the heck do you need faith to sling you into tomorrow like a swamp outlaw riding a swamp rocket with a moonshine-soaked swagger that'd make a swamp gator on a meth-fueled rampage sit up and salute? Swamp life's a chaos buzzsaw. Posse. Days pile worries like a swamp storm freight train on a jet fuel bender tearing through the swamp lands with a triple shot of swamp mud madness. Picture this. You wake up, boom, work's screaming like a banshee on a Red Bull meth spree. Your inbox is a swamp mud tsunami crashing through your sanity with emails piling thicker than swamp gumbo cooked by a moonshine-drunk swamp gator after a week-long swamp bender. Your kids tossing glitter tantrums like a gremlin on a sugar-high rampage that'd make a swamp devil jealous as heck. And your phone's buzzing like a hornet's nest caught in a swamp hurricane. Texts from the boss hollering, "Where's my report, punk? You're late again." Calls from the school yelling, "Your kid's a glitter terrorist, come get him now." Alerts from the bank screaming, "You're broke, swamp rat." All clawing at your swamp-fried soul like a pack of swamp sharks circling a moonshine-soaked carcass ready to feast. By nightfall, posse, you're not just tired, you're swamp drowning in a worry-soaked mess thicker than swamp mud bricks stacked by a swamp gator on a moonshine binge. And tomorrow looms like a swamp monster with jagged swamp teeth ready to chomp your guts into swamp confetti. Swamp ever feel that weight, fam? Like tomorrow's a swamp mess waiting to bury you alive. And you're pacing the floor at 2 a.m., replaying every flop, every fight, every what if, like a broken swamp jukebox stuck on a meth-soaked remix that won't shut its swamp yap. That's me, Swamp Friday. Chaos hit like a ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull meth spree. And I'm pacing, growling, staring at the ceiling like it's laughing at my swamp-fried soul. Why'd I miss that deadline? Boss is gonna swamp fry me. Why'd I snap at my kid? I'm a swamp flop dad. How am I paying that bill? We're swamp toast, guts clawing, brain spinning, no off switch in sight. That's the swamp life default. Posse, worries don't quit. They pile, they claw, they choke, till you're a ragged swamp zombie staggering into tomorrow with faith flickering like a swamp candle in a hurricane about to blow out. But here's the swamp kicker. Fam, God didn't wire you to stumble into tomorrow like a swamp zombie hauling a swamp mud load, till you're a faith-forged wreck pacing the swamplands. Check this swamp holy Molotov cocktail. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11. Straight from the Swamp King himself. Roaring through the swamp exile like a grizzled swamp vet with a megaphone and a bad attitude. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Swamp boom. That's not some weak sauce fortune cookie note to tuck in your swamp pocket. Posse. That's a faith-forged flamethrower blasting your swamp worries into ash and smoke hotter than a swamp bonfire on a moonshine binge that'd make the devil sweat swamp tears. I know the plans, God's flexing. I'm the swamp boss running this show. Punk. I've got tomorrow locked down tighter than a swamp gator's jaws on a moonshine jug. Plans to prosper, not harm, he's growling. Your swamp mess ain't the end, I'm slinging peace. Not chaos. Hope and a future, he's roaring. Faith carries you, swamp rat. Tomorrow's a swamp dawn with a swamp holy glow. Swamp life's a raging swamp hurricane, work's a buzzsaw shredding your soul. Kids are gremlins bombing your swamp house. Bills are sharks circling your swamp fried guts, but faith? That's your swamp Molotov, torch the doubt. Sling the muck. Strut into tomorrow with a Swamp King swagger that'd make chaos blink and run crying. Swamp ever feel tomorrow's a flop? I have, Swamp Friday. Work emails piled like a swamp mud avalanche. My kids' glitter tantrums hit like a swamp riot war zone. Bills stacked like a swamp pyramid. Guts clawing, till I'm pacing like a swamp zombie. But when I slung it, God, carry me. Hope slammed in like a swamp holy haymaker, tomorrow's mine. Punk. And faith carried me like a swamp rocket blasting through the swamp night. Tomorrow, posse, it's a swamp dawn waiting. But without faith, it's a swamp monster with swamp teeth ready to chomp. Real swamp talk. Worries crank louder at dusk, work flops replay like a swamp horror flick on a meth loop. Why'd I miss that deadline? Boss is gonna swamp roast me like a swamp pig on a spit. Kid tantrums echo like a gremlin rave in your skull. Why'd I snap? I'm a swamp wreck dad. Bills stack like a swamp mud pyramid ready to bury you. How am I paying that? We're swamp screwed. And your brain's a swamp tornado spinning. What if till you're a ragged mess clawing at the sheets like a swamp rat in a trap with no way out? Swamp science backs this. Swamp doctors say stress hormones like cortisol spike when you hoard worries. Jacking your heart rate like a swamp gator on a moonshine sprint. Torching your sleep till you're tossing like a swamp fish in a frying pan. Turning you into a swamp zombie by dawn, grumpy as a swamp rat. Weak as a swamp bat. Faith flickering like a swamp candle in a blackout. But faith, posse? That's your swamp holy reset. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 roars. I've got plans, torch the doubt. Sling the muck. And faith carries you into tomorrow like a swamp rocket blasting through the swamp storm with a swamp faith smirk that'd make chaos blink. Swamp ever tried staggering into tomorrow with no faith? I have. Swamp Friday. Works a soul-sucking buzzsaw shredding my sanity like a swamp shark on a feeding frenzy. Emails piling like a swamp mud avalanche that'd bury a swamp gator 6 swamp feet under. My kid's a glitter cannon gremlin turning the living room into a swamp riot warzone that'd make a swamp devil proud. And I'm growling like a swamp gator on a bad moonshine trip that's gone off the rails into a swamp ditch. Night hits. I'm pacing, replaying every flop. Why'd I miss that email? Boss is gonna swamp fry me like a swamp fish. Every fight. Why'd I yell at my kid? I'm a swamp flop dad. What if I can't pay that bill? We're swamp toast. Worries stacking like swamp mud bricks, till I'm a ragged mess staring at the ceiling, till 2 a.m. like it's mocking my swamp fried soul. Sleep? Toast. Chaos wins. I'm a swamp zombie next day. Growling at coffee like a swamp rat. Snapping at air like a swamp dog. Faith flickering like a swamp candle in a hurricane about to blow out. But when I sling it, swamp prayer. God, carry me to tomorrow, 5 seconds. Raw, rowdy, hope slams in like a swamp holy freight train. Peace roars. And faith carries me like a swamp king strutting into the swamp dawn with a moonshine swagger. Next day, swamp steady, faith blazing like a swamp torch. Soul roaring like a swamp gator. Coffee's a victory brew that tastes like swamp holy hope. Chaos tapping out like a punk who picked the wrong swamp fight. That's why, posse. Faith carries you to tomorrow. Keeps your swamp holy strut lit. Your soul steady. Roaring louder than a swamp gator on a moonshine meth rampage. Swamp life's a brawl. Worries wanna bury you. But faith says, not today. Swamp punk, sling it. Strut it. And crash into tomorrow like a swamp faith champ. Alright, higher calling posse. Time to swamp dive into a swamp tale that's gonna hit you like a swamp gator chugging moonshine on a meth-fueled rampage with a chainsaw strapped to its back. Buckle up. 'Cause this swamp Friday chaos nearly swamp drowned me, till faith slung a swamp chill lifeline hotter than a swamp bonfire torching a moonshine jug into a swamp night blaze. Picture this, Friday, 5:45 a.m. Alarm shrieks like a banshee on a Red Bull meth spree. Ripping me out of a dream where I'm swamp fishing with Jesus on a calm swamp lake with a moonshine glow. Rude wake-up call. Posse. I stumble out, bleary-eyed like a swamp zombie who's been up all night pacing the swamplands. Trip over a kid's glitter cannon toy, boom. Glitter explodes like a gremlin's prank gone nuclear. Sticking to my swamp fried face like I'm a swamp disco ball ready for a swamp rave that nobody invited me to. Coffee maker's busted. Spits brown sludge like a swamp toad with a hangover that's seen better swamp days. Car won't start. Battery flatter than a swamp pancake squashed by a moonshine jug under a swamp gator's foot after a swamp bender. I'm cursing like a swamp pirate who's lost his swamp ship. Kicking tires like a swamp rat on a rampage. Neighbors gawking like I'm a swamp zombie on a meltdown. Kids screaming 'cause cereal's soggy. Daddy, it's mush. Fix it. And I'm sprinting to catch a ride like a swamp gator dodging a moonshine bust. Glitter sparkling in the sun like I'm a swamp freak show on parade through the swamplands. Works a buzzsaw. Posse. Boss drops a deadline bomb like a swamp ninja with a grudge and a bad swamp attitude. Finish this report by 5 or you're swamp toast. Punk, I ain't playing. Emails pile like a swamp mud avalanche crashing my inbox, 50 unread. 10 marked, urgent, in caps like they're yelling at my swamp-fried soul louder than a swamp gator roaring on a moonshine bender. Phones buzzing like a hornet's nest on a jet fuel spree. Texts from the wife hollering. Kids sick. Get medicine. Now. Calls from clients barking. Where's my stuff? You're late again. Swamp rat. And I'm growling like a swamp dog who's had enough. Slamming desks like a swamp brawler in a cage match. Coffee spilling like swamp blood on my last clean shirt that's now a swamp casualty headed for the swamp grave. Noon hits. Kids' school calls. He's glitter bombed the art room. Turned it into a swamp riot war zone. Come get him now or we're calling swamp cops. I bold. Pick up my gremlin, glitter in his hair. Grinning like a swamp devil who's proud of his chaos masterpiece, teachers glaring. Control your kid, swamp dad, and I'm muttering. Lady, I can't control my swamp life. Let alone this swamp terrorist with a glitter cannon. Back to work, reports a mess. Boss is pacing like a swamp shark smelling blood in the swamp water. And I'm typing, sweating, cursing like a swamp pirate who's lost his swamp treasure. 5 p.m. hits. I hit send. Boss grunts. Late. Fix it Monday. Swamp punk, and I'm swamp fried. Soul clawing. Brain spinning like a swamp tornado on a moonshine binge that's gone off the rails into a swamp ditch. Night slams in. Home's a swamp storm circus that'd make a swamp clown cry for his swamp mama. Kids coughing like a swamp toad with a cold that won't quit. Wife's frazzled. Where's the medicine? You forgot it again. Swamp head, I forgot it. Posse. Cuz my swamp brain's a wreck spinning in swamp mud. Dogs chewed my shoe into swamp mud confetti like a swamp rat on a mission from the swamp devil. Bills on the table stack like a swamp pyramid ready to bury me 6 swamp feet under. Electric. Rent. Car repair, and my phone's still buzzing. Work emails creeping in like swamp ghosts haunting my swamp night. Monday's gonna suck. Swamp rat. I'm pacing. Growling. Guts churning like a swamp gator wrestling a buzzsaw on a bad moonshine trip. Why'd I miss that deadline? Boss hates me. He's gonna swamp fry me like a swamp fish on a spit. Why'd I snap at my kid? I'm a swamp flop dad who can't get it together. How am I paying these bills? We're swamp toast. Done for. Worries piled thicker than swamp mud bricks stacked by a moonshine drunk swamp gator after a swamp bender. Clawing my skull, till I'm a ragged mess staring at the ceiling. 2 a.m. Sleeps toast. Chaos roaring like a swamp hurricane on a meth rampage that won't quit till I'm a swamp corpse. Next day, swamp zombie. Grumpy as a swamp rat who's lost his swamp cheese. Weak as a swamp bat with no wings. Faith flickering like a swamp candle in a blackout. Snapping at air like a swamp dog who's done with the swamp world. Coffee useless. Chaos 1. Posse. I'm a swamp wreck staggering into Saturday like a swamp ghost. Rewind. Version 2. Faith redo. Same swamp Friday madness tearing my guts like a swamp shark on a moonshine binge. Alarm shrieks. Glitter explodes. Car's dead. Kid's a gremlin. Works a buzzsaw. Boss drops bombs. School calls. Chaos hits like a swamp ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull meth spree that'd make a swamp gator blink. Night falls. I'm pacing. Guts clawing. Same swamp muck. Work flops piling like a swamp mud avalanche crashing my swamp fried soul. Kid tantrums exploding like a glitter cannon gremlin on a sugar meth high. Bill stacks ready to bury me like a swamp pharaoh's curse. Brains a tornado spinning. What ifs, till I'm a ragged mess. But this time, posse. I sling it swamp style. Step back. Shut the swamp roar. Let faith carry me like a swamp outlaw riding a swamp rocket into tomorrow. Swamp prayer. Raw. Rowdy. 5 seconds. God. I'm done. Carry me to tomorrow. Work's a mess shredding my guts. Kid's a glitter devil bombing my swamp life. Bills are choking me. You got me? Boom. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 roars like a swamp holy flamethrower blasting the swamp night. I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope and a future. I name it, work. Kid, bills. Sling it wild like a swamp gator hurling a moonshine jug into the swamp mud with a rebel yell. Drop it hard, you're the swamp king. Carry me, then strut it, tomorrow's yours. Chaos blinks. Swamp hope slams in like a swamp holy haymaker. Knocking worries flat on their swamp mud faces. His plans wrap me, Calm hits like a faith-forged freight train rolling over chaos with a swamp faith smirk. Bed's a swamp chill throne. Kids' cough fades into the swamp night. Wife's asleep. Bills can wait till the swamp dawn. Sleep hits hard like a swamp king strutting into tomorrow. Next day, swamp steady. Faith blazing like a swamp torch lighting the swamplands. Soul roaring like a swamp gator on a moonshine high. Coffee's a victory brew that tastes like swamp holy hope. Chaos tapped out like a punk who picked the wrong swamp fight and lost bad. Diff. Posse? Version 1. No faith. Worries choke. Sleep flops. Tomorrow's toast. I'm a swamp zombie pacing till dawn like a wreck on a moonshine bender. Version 2. Faith slings. Hope rules. God carries, peace roars. Tomorrow's a swamp dawn. Swamp Friday's a storm. Posse. But faith lit a swamp Molotov cocktail. Torch the muck. Sling it wild. Strut into tomorrow like a swamp king owning the swamp night with a moonshine swagger. Real swamp talk. I've been both. Zombie pacing till the swamp dawn or outlaw letting faith carry me. Faith's the game changer. Fam, sling it to the swamp king. And he carries you to tomorrow like a champ who don't mess around. Alright, higher calling posse. Let's swamp dive deep into the word. God's swamp holy playbook for torching today's swamp muck and slinging you into tomorrow with faith like a swamp outlaw riding a swamp rocket with a moonshine-soaked swagger that'd make a swamp gator on a meth-fueled rampage jealous as heck. We're not just flipping pages here. Fam. We're unleashing a swamp holy flamethrower that'll blast your swamp worries into ash and smoke hotter than a swamp bonfire torching a moonshine jug into a swamp night blaze. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, our swamp Molotov cocktail. Straight from the swamp king himself. Roaring through the swamp exile like a grizzled swamp vet with a megaphone and a bad swamp attitude. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Swamp boom. That's no weak sauce fortune cookie note to tuck in your swamp pocket. Posse. That's a faith-forged flamethrower blasting the swamp storm into ash. I know the plans, God's flexing those holy biceps. I'm the swamp boss running this show. Punk. I've got tomorrow locked down tighter than a swamp gator's jaws on a moonshine jug after a swamp bender. Plans to prosper, not harm, he's growling. Your swamp mess ain't the end. Swamp rat, I'm slinging peace, not chaos, into your swamp dawn. Hope and a future, he's roaring. Faith carries you. Posse. Tomorrow's a swamp holy glow. Not a swamp monster chomping your guts. Jeremiah's crew, exiled. Swamp drowning in Babylon. Heard this and faith slung him forward. Swamp ever feel tomorrow's a swamp flop? I have. Swamp Friday. Chaos clawing. Till Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 hit. God's got plans. Faith carried me like a swamp rocket. Tag team this. Posse. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Swamp Faith Hall of Famer roaring like a swamp boss on a faith high. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Swamp boom. That's not some swamp wishy-washy dream. Fam. That's a swamp holy haymaker. Confidence in hope. Faith's your swamp Molotov. Torching doubt. Tomorrow's a swamp dawn. Punk. Assurance of the unseen. God's plans ain't swamp mud you can touch. But faith slings you there. Noah built a swamp ark. Abraham strutted to a swamp land. Faith carried him. Romans chapter 15 verse 13. Paul's bellowing. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Swamp boom. God's the swamp king of hope. Faith fills you. Peace slams in. Hope overflows like a swamp river busting its swamp banks. Swamp life's a buzzsaw, works shredding. Kids bombing, bills chomping, but faith carries you to tomorrow. Swamp nights. Posse. Worries hit like a swamp tornado on a meth-fueled rampage tearing your guts. Work flops replay. Why'd I miss that deadline? Boss is gonna swamp fry me. Kid tantrums echo. Why'd I snap? I'm a swamp flop. Bills stack. How am I paying that? Brains spinning till you're a ragged mess. But faith. Fam? Jeremiah says, I've got plans. Hebrews says, trust the unseen. Romans says, hope overflows. Swamp real. I've paced, work's a mess. Kids a gremlin, till faith hit, God. Carry me. 5 seconds, hope slams in. Chaos taps out. Faith tag team, Jeremiah. Hebrews. Paul, they're roaring. Sling it to tomorrow. Punk, God's grip carries you. Swamp ever doubt tomorrow? Philippians chapter 1 verse 6. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Swamp boom, God's flexing. I started your swamp faith. Punk, I'll carry you. Swamp Friday. Faith roared. God's got tomorrow. Hope hit like a swamp holy freight train. Faith's your swamp Molotov, torched out. Strut into tomorrow. Alright, higher calling posse. Time to swamp sling it. Hacks to torch today's swamp muck and strut into tomorrow with faith like a swamp outlaw riding a swamp rocket with a moonshine-soaked swagger that'd make a swamp gator on a meth-fueled rampage jealous as heck and ready to salute. We're not just flapping gums here. Fam. We're unleashing a 3-step swamp faith knockout that'll sling you into the swamp dawn with hope roaring louder than a swamp hurricane on a jet fuel bender tearing through the swamplands. Chaos wants to bury you alive. Works a soul-sucking buzzsaw shredding your sanity like a swamp shark on a moonshine-soaked feeding frenzy. Kids are glitter cannon gremlins turning your swamp house into a swamp riot warzone that'd make a swamp devil proud. Bills are stacking like a swamp mud pyramid ready to crush your swamp fried soul like a swamp pharaoh's curse with swamp teeth chomping. But faith? That's your swamp Molotov cocktail. Posse. Your swamp holy haymaker. Your chaos-slaying chill blaster that turns the swamp night into a launchpad for a swamp dawn strut. Buckle up tight. Here's how you do it. Step by swamp step. With enough juice to make the swamp sky shake and the swamp gators roar like they're in on the swamp faith party. Step 1. Name it. Call the swamp worry out like a swamp brawler staring down a punk in a cage match with a swamp gator grin that says, "You picked the wrong swamp fight." Swamp punk. Night slams in like a swamp hurricane on a meth binge. Worries clawing your guts like a swamp shark with a bad attitude, works a mess. Tearing my inbox to shreds like a swamp tornado on a Red Bull meth spree that won't quit till I'm swamp toast. Kids a glitter devil. Exploding chaos like a gremlin on a sugar-high rampage that'd make a swamp rat jealous as heck. Bills are piling thicker than swamp mud bricks stacked by a moonshine-drunk swamp gator after a week-long swamp bender. Ready to crush me like a swamp bug under a swamp boot. Don't dodge it. Don't duck it. Don't wimp out like a swamp chicken. Roar it loud like a swamp gator growling at a moonshine thief who's about to regret stepping into the swamp lands. God, this is my muck. Works frying me like a swamp fish on a spit. Kids a tornado tearing my swamp house apart into swamp confetti. Bills are sharks circling my swamp fried soul with swamp teeth bared. Real swamp talk. I paced the swamp night. Growling like a swamp dog who's had enough. Works a buzzsaw shredding my guts like a swamp shark. Kids a gremlin bombing my swamp sanity with glitter cannons. Bills are choking me like a swamp python on a moonshine high, but when I stop, hush the swamp roar. Name it raw, 5 seconds. No fluff, no weak sauce. God. Here's the junk. This is what's clawing my swamp fried soul like a swamp tornado. You're not whining, posse. You're flexing faith like a swamp brawler with a moonshine jug in one hand and a swamp faith smirk. Calling the chaos out under the swamp king's swamp holy watch. The swamp noise fades. He roars. Bring it here, swamp punk, so name it loud. Name it proud. Let the swamp night hear your swamp faith growl shake the swamplands like a swamp quake. Step 2. Sling it. Hand it over quick like a swamp Molotov cocktail torching a swamp storm into ash and smoke that'd choke a swamp gator on a moonshine bender and send it crying back to its swamp mama. You named it, now sling it. Posse. Raw and rowdy. No weak sauce allowed in this swamp fight. No fancy church blah blah to slow you down. Just 5 seconds of straight-up swamp prayer that'd make a swamp outlaw proud. God. Carry me to tomorrow. I'm swamp fried. Works a mess shredding my swamp soul like a buzzsaw on a meth rampage. Kids a glitter cannon gremlin bombing my swamp life into swamp confetti. Bills are sharks ready to chomp me into swamp chum. Haul this junk off me. You're the swamp king flexing holy muscle with plans hotter than a swamp bonfire. Don't overthink it. Ain't no long-winded sermon here. No swamp poetry to bore the swamp gators. Just growl it out like a swamp outlaw tossing a moonshine jug into the swamp mud with a rebel yell that'd wake a swamp zombie from a swamp grave. Swamp real. I've stood there. Chaos clawing my guts like a swamp shark. Works frying me like a swamp fish on a spit. Kids a tornado tearing my swamp sanity into swamp shreds. Slung it wild. God. Take this. I'm done hauling this swamp mud. Carry me. 5 seconds, boom. It's slung. Faith's roaring like a swamp holy flamethrower blasting the swamp night into a swamp faith inferno. His plans wrap you. I've got tomorrow. Punk. Sling it fast. Sling it hard. Let the swamp sky shake with your swamp faith strut. Prayers your swamp rocket, torch the chaos. Blast it to the swamp king. And feel his hope slam in like a swamp holy freight train rolling over the swamp storm with a swamp faith smirk that'd make chaos blink and run. Step 3. Strut it. Drop the muck. Posse. And strut into tomorrow with faith like a swamp king kicking back on a throne of swamp chill with a moonshine-soaked swagger that owns the swamp night. You've named it. Slung it. Now strut it. 5 seconds. You got me. God, I'm steady. You're the swamp boss running this swamp show with plans for a swamp dawn. I'm done hauling this swamp mud. Carry me there. Then let it fall. Work. Kid. Bills, you're huge. I'm small. Tomorrow's yours. I'm strutting. Crash calm. Strut steady with hope roaring like a swamp gator on a moonshine high. Swamp real. I've slung it. Work. Kid. Bills, strutted it. You got this. I'm steady. And hope slams in like a swamp holy haymaker. Knocking worries flat on their swamp mud faces with a swamp faith grin. His plans hit, beds a swamp chill throne. Kid's cough fades into the swamp night. Wife's asleep. Bills can wait till the swamp dawn. Sleep hits hard like a faith-forged freight train rolling over chaos. Chaos taps out. I'm done. Swamp punk. And you're strutting steady into tomorrow like a swamp king owning the swamp lands with a moonshine swagger that'd make the swamp gators roar. Swamp example. Friday night. Chaos hits like a swamp ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull meth spree. Works a buzzsaw. Emails piling like a swamp mud avalanche crashing my swamp soul. Boss growling. Fix it Monday or you're swamp toast. Swamp rat. Kids a gremlin. Glitter bombed the house into a swamp riot warzone that'd make a swamp devil proud. Coughing like a swamp toad with a cold that won't quit. Bills stack. Electric. Rent. Car. Phone's buzzing. You're screwed. Swamp punk. I'm pacing. Guts clawing. Name it. God. Work's a mess. Kids a tornado. Bills are sharks. Sling it. Carry me to tomorrow. I'm swamp fried. Strut it. You got this. I'm steady. Tomorrow's yours. 5 seconds. Hope roars like a swamp holy freight train. Calm hits like a faith-forged haymaker knocking chaos out cold with a swamp faith smirk. Next day, swamp steady, faith blazing like a swamp torch lighting the swamplands. Chaos blinking like a punk who picked the wrong swamp fight. Faith carried me, swamp dawn ruled. 7-day challenge. Posse, 15 seconds nightly. Torch the muck and strut into tomorrow like a swamp faith champ with a moonshine swagger. Night 1. Name it. Work. Kids. Bills. Sling it. God. Carry me. Strut it. Tomorrow's yours. Night 2. Same. Works a buzzsaw. Kids a gremlin. Sling it. Strut it. Hope slams in like a swamp holy haymaker. Night 3. Boss hates me. Bills are sharks. Sling it wild. Strut steady like a swamp king. Night 4. Works frying me. Kids a tornado. Name it. Faith carries. Night 5. Bills chomping. Chaos clawing. Hope's roaring. By day 5. Swamp steadies your default. Worries fade like a swamp mist in the swamp dawn. Hope roars like a swamp gator on a moonshine high. Sleeps a faith-forged throne that owns the swamp night. Swamp real. I've done it. Day 1. Chaos clawing. Named it. Works a mess. Slung it. Strutted. Hope hit like a swamp holy freight train rolling over the swamp storm. Day 3. Worries weaker. Faith flexing like a swamp boss. Day 5. Swamp steadies my jam. Chaos blinking like a swamp rat. Day 7. Faith carrying me to tomorrow's my swamp faith strut. Posse. Chaos ain't got nothing on me. I'm a swamp king strutting into the swamp dawn with a moonshine-soaked swagger. Faith's your swamp Molotov. Name it. Sling it. Strut it. torch the muck. Crash calm. Carry me to tomorrow like a swamp faith champ owning the swamplands. Swamp life's a storm, work's a hurricane tearing your swamp soul. Kids are gremlins on a sugar meth high bombing your swamp house. Bills are sharks circling with swamp teeth, but 15 seconds nightly. And faith slings you into the swamp dawn with a swamp holy roar that shakes the swamp sky like a swamp quake. Alright, higher calling posse. Day 28's a swamp banger that'd make a swamp gator on a moonshine meth rampage jealous as heck. And we're wrapping this swamp faith riot like a pack of swamp outlaws torching chaos into ash and smoke hotter than a swamp bonfire blasting a moonshine jug into a swamp night inferno. Faith that carries you to tomorrow, we've slung it wild. Posse. And Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 roared like a faith-forged flamethrower, slinging hope into a swamp chill knockout that'd make a swamp storm blink and run crying back to its swamp mama with its swamp tail between its swamp legs. Swamp life's a buzzsaw. Days hit like a swamp tornado freight train on a jet fuel roller coaster with a triple shot of moonshine madness tearing your guts like a swamp shark on a feeding frenzy. But faith's your swamp Molotov cocktail. Your swamp holy haymaker. Your chaos-slaying chill blaster that turns the swamp night into a launchpad for a swamp dawn strut with a moonshine-soaked swagger. We've swamp dived deep today, named the muck like a swamp brawler staring down a punk in a cage match. Slung it raw like a swamp gator hurling a moonshine jug into the swamp mud with a rebel yell. Strutted it steady with faith carrying us into tomorrow like a swamp king owning the swamplands, and God's your swamp king. Flexing those holy biceps with plans hotter than a swamp bonfire to catch your swamp mudload like a champ who don't mess around. Not sipping tea while you drown in the swamp storm. Swamp Friday chaos nearly swamp drowned me. Work flops piling like a swamp mud avalanche crashing my swamp fried soul into swamp confetti. Kid tantrums exploding like a glitter cannon gremlin on a sugar meth high that'd make a swamp devil proud. Bills stacking like a swamp pyramid ready to bury me 6 swamp feet under with swamp teeth chomping, till I named it. Slung it swamp style. God. Carry me to tomorrow, I'm done. Hope slammed in like a swamp holy freight train rolling over chaos with a swamp faith smirk. Peace hit like a faith-forged haymaker knocking worries flat. And faith carried me into the swamp dawn, swamp steady one. Posse. And chaos tapped out like a punk who picked the wrong swamp fight and lost bad with a swamp whimper. Let's swamp recap this riot. Fam. Cuz you've been swamp roaring with me through 28 days of faith-forged fury. And day 28's a swamp holy crown jewel shining brighter than a swamp moonshine glow on a starry swamp night. We kicked off with why, swamp life's a storm. Worries claw like a swamp gator on a moonshine binge. But Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 growls, I've got plans. Punk. Faith torched the doubt into ash like a swamp napalm blast. Then my swamp tail. Friday chaos hit like a swamp ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull meth spree. Works a buzzsaw shredding my swamp sanity. Kids a gremlin bombing my swamp house into swamp confetti. Bills are sharks circling. I paced till dawn like a swamp zombie, till faith lit a swamp chill lifeline, hope roared. Chaos blinked like a swamp rat who lost the swamp fight. The word, Jeremiah, Hebrews, Paul, bellowed, sling it to tomorrow, faith's your swamp Molotov. Blasting worries into smoke with a swamp faith strut. And hacks, name it, sling it, strut it, 15 seconds nightly. Swamp steadies your jam by day 5. Turning you into a swamp king strutting into the swamp dawn with a moonshine swagger that'd make the swamp gators roar. Swamp life's a brawl, work's a hurricane tearing your swamp soul. Kids are gremlins on a sugar meth high. Bills are sharks with swamp teeth, but faith says, not today. Swamp punk, torch the muck. Strut steady. And faith carries you to tomorrow like a swamp faith champ owning the swamplands with a swamp holy roar. Swamp real. Posse, one night, I'm pacing, guts clawing, work emails piling like a swamp mud avalanche, kid coughing like a swamp toad, bills glaring like swamp sharks with swamp teeth. I'm a swamp wreck ready to collapse. Step back, God, work's a mess, kid's a tornado, bills are choking me, carry me, slung it, strutted it, hope hit like a swamp holy haymaker, peace ruled like a swamp king on a throne. Faith carried me into the swamp dawn. Next day, swamp steady, faith blazing like a swamp torch lighting the swamplands. Chaos blinking like a punk who lost bad. That's you. Posse, sling your swamp muck. Strut with faith, and God's plans carry you like a swamp boss who don't play. Mic toss, drop your faith tale below. What swamp muck did faith carry you through? Work frying you? Kid a gremlin? Bills chomping? I'm reading every swamp growl. Swamp posse rules the swamp night. Join the 7-day challenge, 15 seconds nightly. God, carry me to tomorrow. I'm done, name it. Sling it, strut it, by day 5. Swamp steadies your jam. Smash like if this torched your chaos. Share it with your swamp crew. Let's swamp roll this faith riot across the swamplands like a swamp hurricane on a mission with a moonshine-soaked swagger. Next up, day 29. 30 days of faith. What I've learned, swamp faith's roaring wild. Posse, picture this. You're strutting steady. Faith flexing like a swamp gator on a moonshine high. Looking back at 30 days of swamp holy fury with a swamp faith smirk that'd make chaos blink. We're swamp storming into the recap, chaos taps out. God rules. Lessons slam in like a swamp holy freight train rolling over the swamplands. Grab your brew, coffee, tea, that feral swamp moonshine juice if you're still reeling, sling your muck. Strut into tomorrow. Let's swamp torch this trail together. Higher Calling's posse is lit, 28 days down. 2 to go. America swamp style. We're slaying chaos, strutting steady, carrying it with the swamp king like swamp faith champs who don't quit with a moonshine-soaked roar.